Welcome back to Dark Academia Queen. This is episode 20. Can you believe it? It's been focusing a lot of my energy on this podcast. But I do plan on bringing the Catacombs of Paris back. So here, hopefully, um, me and my friend Gabby are gonna set a date out next week to set a date out and hopefully try to nail that episode down. So you guys will be getting the Catacombs of Paris. But if you're new here, please hit that like button, ring that bell for notification. Also, please subscribe, help a girl out. um, so I do have three sister podcasts as well. True Crime Lounge, Just a Breezy Chat, and Sassy Southern Belle. Uh, but with that being said, why don't we dive into today's episode, shall we? Now, I love Gothic fiction. That's one of my favorite forms of literature. And today we're going to be talking about the American Gothic fiction. And it's a subgenre of Gothic fiction. And these elements are specific to American Gothic fiction, and that includes rationality versus irrational, Puritanism, guilt, the uncanny, abhumans, ghosts, and monsters. So, what is this analysis of a major theme? Well, the inability of many Gothic characters to overcome perversely birational thought and quintessential American Gothic, and it is not uncommon for the protagonist to be sucked into the realm of madness because of his or her inclination toward the irrational. A tendency such as this flies on the face of a higher reason and seems to mock 18th century Enlightenment thinking, as outlined by common sense in the Age of Reason. Also, one cannot argue that contemporary Gothic themes of mechanism and automation that rationalism and logic lead to. Now, Puritan imagery, particularly that of hell, is acted as a potent brain candy of the 19th century authors like Edgar Allan Poe, Nathaniel Hawthorne. The night and the nightmarish visions of the Puritan culture and condemnation, reinforced by shame and guilt, that was created as a lasting impact on the collective consciousness. Notions of this predestination and original sin are added to the doom and gloom of the traditional Puritan values, and this perspective of its underlying as an American society ripen and blossom on stories like Rachel as Dyer, um, The Pit and the Pendulum, and Young Goodman Brown and the Scarlet Letter. The dungeons and endless corridors that are hallmarks of European Gothics are often removed from American Gothic, in which castles are replaced with caves. Lloyd Smith reinterprets Moby Dick to be a point convincingly, and earlier settlers were prone to links to unexplored territory which surrounded, and in some cases engulfed them. Fear of the unknown stemming from environmental factors like darkness and vastness is notable in Brown's Edgar Huntley. Now, the emergence of the abhuman is an American Gothic fiction, and which closely coupled with the emergence of Charles Darwin theories of evolution. Ideas of evolution or devolution of species, new biological knowledge, and technological advances create a fertile environment for many to question their essential humanity. Parallels between humans and other living things on the planet were also obvious by the aforementioned. This manifests like in H.P. Lovecraft's The Outsider, Nicholas Baker's Subsoil. Ghosts and monsters are closely related to this theme. They function as the spiritual equivalent of the human, and they may relate to being evocative or unseen realities. And the Bostonians, Julia Kristov concepts of this ejection are employed by the American Gothic authors such as Charlotte Perkins Gilman, and Christovus theorizes that the expulsion of all things defiling. Now, much like a course, it is common of a coping mechanism and a reclaim of coping mechanism for humanities. For example, the yellow wallpaper really exploits this concept. So I can actually remember reading the yellow wallpaper like in high school and then at Wallace State. And I read it like 2 or 3 times, but I know the story like the back of my hand, and it's still one of my favorite stories to this day to read. But it can be read as a social commentary on the oppressive condition women suffered in their homes at the turn of the century. And honestly, it's more relatable because it talks a lot about mental health. And the older I get, the more, and going through like a lot of my own, like going through a lot of my own mental health problems, like it becomes evident and the more I read it. For example, that's why I like the color yellow. Because it does represent mental health. And it does, like, yellow to me has just always been one of those colors that it can mask what you can't see. But early Gothic writers were particularly concerned with frontier wilderness and wilderness anxiety and the lasting effects of puritanical societies. For example, the legend of Sleepy Hollow is perhaps the most famous American colonial era Gothic fiction. Um, Brown was deeply affected by these circumstances as seen in Reeland, and the novel inspired Logan by John Neal, which is notable for rejecting British Gothic conventions in favor of distinctly American material. Poe, Hawthorne, Irving are also grouped together in this, and they present an impressive and disturbing portrait of human experience. Poe accomplished this through the window of disease and depressive fascination with Maurice. Irving with the keen charm of masterful storytelling, and Hawthorne with the familiar bonds to past ammunition, like the Salem witch trials, which he addresses in the Custom House. So, what about Southern American Gothic? And this includes stories like in the Southern United States, particularly including Civil War. A Rose Rimley is a fine example of this one, and I love me a good Southern Gothic story. I am not gonna lie to you on that one. It is following the Civil War and is set in economics and cultural decline engulfed in the region. The stories tend to focus on decay in economic, educational, and living standards post Civil War South. This is often heavy emphasis on race, class relations, while the rural environment provides an effective substitute for traditional Old World Gothic settings. For example, plantation estates fill the role of European castles. Some writers of the Southern Gothic include Flannery O'Connor and UW Welty. And even though Welty still hated that, I wonder if she just came around to it. I do plan on talking about her eventually. But authors who fall in this category are category of new. There's also a category called New American Gothic, and this includes Flannery O'Connor, Sean Hawkes, J.D. Salinger, Shirley Jackson, and these writers also rely on their use of private worlds to read their Gothic intrigue. As such as the destruction of the family unit is a commonplace with New American Gothic. The site became the setting of microdasms, and a particular brand of horror creates. These stories also have a sort of anti-hero, an anxiety-riddled individual whose little admiration stream. These features can also be conspicuous of a story of a good man is hard to find. The Laughing Man, Wise Blood, The Lime Twig, The Haunting of Hill House, and The Beetle Lag. What are some famous examples of this? Well, To Kill a Mockingbird is a good one. Young Goodwin Brown, The Minister's Black Veil, The Fall of the House of Usher by Poe, The Telltale Heart, The House of the Seven Gables, Moby Dick, The Yellow Wallpaper, Afterward, The Lottery, The Haunting of Hill House. We Have Always Lived in the Castle, Child of God, Interview with a Vampire, Shining, and Beloved. These are all excellent examples of the American Gothic fiction. Alright, that is it for this episode. Join me next time as we discuss I Have Yet to Decide. Y'all have a great day.